Harry Gant runs it over, blows it up, and Travis catches a piece of the chunk of the window. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana, and my parents went to Speedway High School. And believe it or not, of course, the Motor Speedway is in Speedway, Indiana. And for those of you that are not from Indianapolis, Speedway is a town and they have a high school. And just like all high schools, they have a mascot. And the mascot for Speedway High School is the Spark Plugs. Go Spark Plugs, right? So, I mean, if you're a Falcon or a Giant or a Trojan or whatever you are, Speedway, Indiana's the Spark Plugs. So my parents grew up out there. My father and grandfather owned a barber shop on Main Street in Speedway, and that is just outside of Turn 1 of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So when you see all of the drivers back from the 60s through the 70s, they would get their picture taken on the starting grid, but they always wanted to look tidy. They would walk over from the Speedway to my parents' barbershop, and my dad's cut A.J. Foyt's hair, my dad Rutherford's, Benthausen's, all the big names growing up. So Speedway, that goofy little piece of property in Indianapolis, means the world to me. We used to live so close where we would have to turn the TV up so we can hear it over the cars on the track. That's Speedway, Indiana to me. Now that Roger Penske has bought the track and Doug Bowles is in charge of the track now, it is a breath of fresh air into that piece of real estate, and they are doing incredible work over there, from maintenance and remodeling everything. Not that the Tony George era was terrible. And if you're not a racing fan and live in Indianapolis, you might need your pulse checked, but especially being that close to the track. And growing up there, IndyCar was always it, but there was a golden age of NASCAR, and NASCAR was huge. And it was drastically bigger then than it is now. NASCAR is a shell of itself at this point. But in the early 90s, they started talking about racing Winston Cup cars at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And being a racing fan and everything, I'm like, you could have put gerbils on the track racing, and I would have been there to watch. Well, maybe not gerbils. But it was awesome. So they had tire tests, and they had to improve the track, and they had to make the wall bigger, and they put a lot of money into the Motor Speedway just to land a Winston Cup race. And in the 92, they had a tire test, and they had, a sellout crowd. Well, not a sellout, but they had 50,000 people there to watch them practice Winston Cup, and just ridiculous. The good old boys are coming up to Indianapolis. So they set a date for the first Brickyard 400, and that was in 1994. And the city of Indianapolis did something that will never happen again, and may have not happened before, but they sponsored a car. So for absolutely no reason at all, the city of Indianapolis said, hey, we want to get behind this number 99 Checkers Pizza car. And it's Checkers like pizza and subs and soda, but the 99, it was 99 cents. We didn't have Checkers in Indianapolis, so that didn't make much sense. A local businessman in Indianapolis that was associated with a truck dealership up in northern Indiana that would take semi-trucks and make them have the big, huge sleepers on them, for like Mayflower trucks and all these other big trucks. He convinced Venture Racing, which was just a husband and wife, to, hey, let's ditch Checkers and let's put all these sponsors from local Indianapolis on here, from Mayflower and Target and all these, and local WRTV6, which was the ABC affiliate that was going to carry the race. So Indianapolis built the corporate car of Indianapolis and put 1985 Indy 500 winner Danny Sullivan behind the wheel. And Danny Sullivan is a great driver. He is world famous for the spin and win in 1985, where he spun in front of Mario Andretti between 1 and 2 and then went on to win the race, which is absolutely incredible. So the city of Indianapolis has this car, says the corporate car of Indianapolis on it, number 99, black, awesome Chevy Lumina. They have a named driver, and it's an extremely underfunded team. I had no business. It would be like Travis and Ed putting a car in the race. We had no business being in the race. All the right names, just not all the right pieces. So they go out, and Mayor Goldsmith and Danny Sullivan unveil this car at the convention center, and clap, 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 and it's a Pontiac, even though they're racing a Lumina. And they go out on Chevrolet testing day, and Danny Sullivan blows the thing up. And we're in trouble because this is a heavily underfunded team. And now we have to qualify this thing. And first day qualifying, it didn't happen. So you have one more shot to put this thing in the show. And Indianapolis, obviously, 2.5 miles. And it's a big monster place where you can make a lot of mistakes. So if you come down the main stretch, go through 1, short shoot 2, if you slide it through 2, you scrub all your speed off going down the backstretch. And that is a no-no, especially for these big, heavy cars. So somehow, Venture Racing and the city of Indianapolis borrowed or rented an engine from Richard Childress Racing, and they dropped it into this thing. So second day qualifying, Danny Sullivan goes out there with 0 practice-ish in this car with a brand new motor and takes the green flag, comes down, boom, through 1, through 2, dirt tracks it sideways through 2, scrubs all his speed off down backstretch, comes around, takes a checkered flag, and when he's coming back around on his cool down lap, everybody in 3 is clapping. And they just thought, he's like, hey, whatever. He had no idea that by the time he got back to pit lane that he had qualified at 26th. And he just kept his foot in it as through the slide. And it's almost scary to watch qualifying attempt. So there we go. Danny Sullivan and the city of Indianapolis for the very first Brickyard 400 is going to put a car in the field. And the sold out 400,000+ people to watch this thing. Like they're going to get their investment return. Oh my God, Danny Sullivan's here. And AJ Foyt is in it. And then the other 2, I think it was Jeff Brabham and John Andretti were the only other. There were 4 IndyCar racers that raced the first Brickyard 400. I had my ticket in turn 1 with my mentor, Phil Blake. Phil Blake basically saved my life. He taught me 12 volts. I was the car stereo nerd, and everybody would bring their stuff to my house. And still to this day, with the Cannonball Run ambulance, everything in there, I could tell you which wire goes where, to what relay, to whatever. And if Phil Blake didn't teach me 12 volts, I have no idea what I'd be doing today. And he kept me grounded, and I'm still a car guy today, and still a 12-volt guy today because of him. So Phil and I went to the first Brickyard 400, and we sat in turn 1. And the spirit and the atmosphere, and when the pace car pulls off, and you're like, you can hear the roar of the people down and down the main stretch, but you can't see it because they didn't have TVs all the way around the track back then. And then here they come, and Earnhardt and Rick Mast slam doors going into 1, and which pretty much ended, Rick Mast's career, because that was a moment where they had a whole bunch of carbon monoxide in the car the rest of the day. And then Earnhardt slams the wall in turn 4, and this is the first damn lap of the Brickyard 400, and these guys are putting on a show. And, parade laps before that and all this stuff, and you see all the cars and all this stuff. And here comes a 99, and we're like going, damn, I mean, it's moving. And here it comes again, and we're like, man, we're on the roll here. Like, the city of Indianapolis has got a car in the Brickyard 400. It's not the city of Greenville. It's not the city of Alpharetta. The city of Indianapolis, it's sponsored a car, and it's qualified, and it's racing, and it has a Indy 500 champion. And then it brought out the first yellow flag. So we're all sitting there in turn 1, and the passenger side window blows out of the Chevy Lumina 99. Lands in the race surface. And then here comes Harry Gant. He runs it over and blows it into the stands. So all this acrylic plexiglass window, of course, it was an extremely underfunded team, and all they would have had to do is snap the window in, because Winston Cup rules and NASCAR rules state that you have to have a passenger side window, and they just forgot to snap the window in. So before it was the 99 car, it was a Morgan McClure car, it was a Kodak car, probably a Sterling Marlin or Ernie Irvin car back then. And so it lands in the race course. Harry Gant runs it over, blows it up, and Travis catches a piece of the chunk of the window. And I'm like going, oh my God. And everybody's like scrambling it's like catching a baseball in the outfield for a home run. Danny Sullivan brings it in, turns the car off, and the pit crew looks at him like, the hell are you here for? They had no idea that the passenger side window had blown out, and he had just brought out the first caution flag ever at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the Brickyard 400. They go and get a replacement window from another team. They put it in hastily and screw it in. And he goes on to finish 33rd, starting position 26, lost 5 laps, but he kept all the doors on it and everything, and it finished. The mighty number 99 finished the first Brickyard 400. and Danny Sullivan made about 20 times as much as the car did for finishing, and parted ways. Motor goes back to Richard Childress. The car goes and lives in North Carolina. But most of these cars, other than the winning car, Jeff Gordon's car, would have been recycled for another race or sold for an ARCA team or a Busch race or something. The number 99 car never went on to race again. It went to storage. I saw it floating around the internet about 15 years ago. It was sitting next to a Cottonelle bathroom tissue car collecting dust, and had a little plaque on it that it had raced in the first Brickyard 400. So I was like, man, what the hell happened to that car? I found out that it was for sale again simply through a Facebook Marketplace ad. And I had seen pictures of it pop up all over the place, but that means that it's available. It may be a little out of my range, but whatever. Aaron Brown, who worked for Earnhardt, and he runs a shop in Denver, North Carolina called The Garage Shop, and he restores Winston Cup cars. And I said, hey, can I come down and see this car? I had bought a trailer at Kaufman, and I was coming to see Ed, so I'm just going to cut down through there. And he said, Travis, it's at the North Carolina Motorsports Hall of Fame. And I go, He said, yeah, it's sitting there next to two petty cars and whatever. He said, they're all locked down right now, but I can meet you over there with the owner, and if you really want to see this thing. And I said, man, this is if it said Burger King on it or Kmart, I wouldn't give a hoot. But I'm from Indianapolis, and this is like finding the spirit of St. Louis. And if you're from St. Louis, out of all the cars that I've ever seen turn a lap, and all the multiple races and everything, and the golden era of racing has, I think, long since passed. My birthday falls on the 20th, and I was a Gordon Johncock fan because his car was 20, and Tom Sneva carried 20. And I became a fan of his growing up in Indianapolis. And I remember the Texaco Star, the STP car, and everything else. But when the 99 corporate car of Indianapolis pulled onto the track wearing my hometown's name, it is my favorite car that I have ever seen turn a lap on any track in my life. I head over to the North Carolina Motorsports Hall of Fame to meet Aaron Brown, and Aaron brought what he would consider a little horsepower, no pun intended. He brought Ryan Newman, NASCAR driver from Indiana, to kind of seal the deal. So I get there, and Newman's there, and Aaron's there, and he's like, here it is. And it is wearing the same paint, the same dents, anything that happened to it in the 1994 Brickyard 400, it is sitting there. And the only two cars that still wear the same paint from that day is the winning car and this car. Everything else has been recycled. Everything went on to a different life, went to Talladega, went to Pocono because of a flat track, went anywhere, but it never was to race again. And it just went into storage. The 99 car lived in a garage in somebody's neighborhood, and that's where it just sat. And so Aaron bought it, cleaned it up, took it to the North Carolina Motorsports Hall of Fame. I called him and said, can I buy this thing? He said, as long as I don't turn it into a Days of Thunder car. Because every person that has contacted him wants to turn it into a coal trickle car. And I said, I'm from Indianapolis, I would never do that. So I bought it. I bought it from Aaron Brown, and he took it back to his shop in North Carolina, and he is restoring it. And we are going to run it again with the permission of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I hope you're listening. And the incredible president of the Motor Speedway, Doug Bowles. And we are secretly going to, hopefully, well, the secret may be out, get Danny Sullivan to turn a couple more laps in it. But regardless, I went ahead and bought the corporate car of Indianapolis because I'm from Indianapolis, and it's coming back home again. And it will return to the Yard of Bricks one more time.
We'd like to thank Patrick Adair Designs for their support of the VINwiki channel this month. Patrick and his team make some of the most amazing rings out of the most exotic materials on Earth. They make rings out of superconductors and meteorites and stardust and all the things that you can imagine, including old parts from broken exotic cars. They've got over 20,000 customers, and Patrick decided to document his journey and the ways that he makes his rings and the cars that he enjoys on his own YouTube channel. So he's part of our YouTube family. He's coming by to tell some stories soon, but check him out at the link in the description below and use the code VINwiki for a 15% discount. Thank them for their support of the channel and find you an awesome ring.